Disclaimer. The information on this show and provided from or through this show is general in nature and is not specific to you or anyone else. You should not make any decision, financial investment, life, or otherwise, based on any of the information presented on this show without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional or advisor. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this show at your own risk. Try not to be a f***ing idiot.
So we're exploring all things that are considered normal in the day of your life, for example. Mm-hmm. And we can probably start at where or how we even met in the first place, which probably goes back to the AI meetup.
Queensland AI, which is getting ever more popular and exciting. It's a great meetup group, and we met there, and two guys passionate about technology, basically, and it's been good times.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think we initially were talking about a concept for what was it? It was AI in 3D, or using AI for because I was doing a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality at the time. It was image processing, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've looked at a few projects. I think we've ended up examining pose recognition more recently. But yeah, we looked at speech for a little bit and all sorts of things, I think. Which is to say, partly, so I'm an ML consultant and data science guy. So you might have an idea, and I could, help clarify how realistic is that idea, and
yes,
how much work is it? What's the hard part? What's the easy part? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of new capability that hasn't yet been turned into actuality. So a good example, we were just referencing pose applications, right? So now that you can look at a video stream and kind of know what are the poses of people in there, and there's, I suppose, so many aspects of life where it might be very important to know what are people's poses, how's it going. So an example might be an old person's home where they've got a risk factor of falling and that kind of thing. So if you've perhaps got a passive helper AI model that is just looking to recognize if someone's fallen down, that might really help keep people safe, for example.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So, but obviously, I mean, sports is another example. You can imagine the role of a trainer so often is to help build your pose into various things.
Yes,
at various points
which we've gone down that path a fair way, and I'm not sure where that project's at, but I left that with Jared, who I hope I can have on the podcast at some point. Take us to the beginning for you and how you got into the space initially, or what was the lead up? What did you were you in another industry first before you got into the AI consulting space? What was all of that?
So before that, I've sort of fully embraced sort of machine learning and data science more explicitly. I have been a software developer for technology companies for a long time. Generally tech and data handling companies. And it was the sort of main explosion in this space, you might say, if you wanted to, is the deep learning revolution when neural networks really crushed it. And perhaps, the moment in that really brought me on board was around 2015. So a model called AlphaGo defeated a human world champion at the game of Go. And it was an astonishing event, really, because a lot of people had thought it was at least 10 years away. So that was really a shocking moment where we have these ideas in our head of how long it'll take for certain technologies to catch up. And so really I was seeing, wow, this technology is moving forward very rapidly, and very rapidly we'll see in our lifetime so much getting automated and changed. yeah,
So when you
by
saw
this
that
kind of thing.
event, when that occurred, and I remember
Mm.
watching, I think it was on Netflix or some other, maybe it was Google.
Yeah.
There's a documentary about it that came out. I think it was a few years
Mm.
ago, and I watched that. It was fascinating, and just how emotional the champion
Mm.
would get at the end. Um, you know,
Yes, a huge moment. Yeah, quite profound. We had thought Go as a game, as a challenge, was going to be a real bastion for humanity.
mm,
Like, we had many ways to feel proud about what our brains are capable of,
mm,
and here was one big example of it. And we thought, yeah, it's going to take ages for our technology to be able to defeat us, but AlphaGo really did get way better than people, and of course, it's kept going from there in the 6 years since.
yes, yes.
So
Remember the end of that
yeah,
documentary? The champion was saying in his own in his native language, saying, was it is he Korean, South Korean? I can't remember.
I think
Taiwanese.
a Korean player.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
but he was saying
I
about
believe.
how he was planning on using AlphaGo algorithm to actually increase his own knowledge of the game and to become a better player. He was going to start playing the algorithm. So I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
interesting. But yeah, from that inspiration, how did you start getting hands on with the space? Obviously, you were a fan of the space. You were doing software development,
yeah,
software engineering. But in
that's it.
2015, 16, how do
Mm.
you go from,
I toggled hard into it. Yeah,
yeah,
so it's easier than ever in a sense, in that the educational courses that are available are better and better.
mm,
But at least back then, there were some that were available. These MOOCs, as you call them, like online courses that may be quite cheap, perhaps, and get you through learning a piece of technology. And they're very empowering. So this, I think, a very important point is that there's much less like bottlenecks to the growth of knowledge as there used to be. Like back in the day, people thought I kind of like need to go to a university or something to learn about the advanced stuff.
yes,
But I feel that's like less and less the case.
yeah,
That a person can just sign up for the course and learn from home, and away you go. So that's one example. Online resources. I'm also a fan of ultimately like getting a textbook in your hands as well.
mm,
That's can be a great way to learn, and an easier way to read material.
yes,
Uh, I guess there's a whole lot of study strategy and problem solving and that kind of thing that goes along the way, but ultimately it's a long journey where you're just trying to move forward each day, learn a bit more, and you might think.
I think you
Mhm.
described it to me as is a journey as well. Rather than you go and you study this, it never ends and it's always changing. And it's really, you got to
Yes.
throw out the idea that you can become the expert and stay an expert for many many years in the
No.
space, right? It because it's
Well, the
constantly
field itself
evolving.
is very young.
Mm,
Yeah. So the technology landscape that represents the modern tools to use are shifting quite rapidly. So it would certainly be easy to like start to get too comfortable with a redundant set of tools or an obsolete set of tools. So part of what I guess I enjoy about this career direction is this requirement for learning that it forces upon me.
yes,
It's just it's empowering to challenge yourself in these ways, and I think it helps keep you young. So you want to enjoy challenge and lean into challenge, because like it's not really winning to be sitting on the couch doing nothing. Actually, in my view, really winning is doing something difficult and getting feedback from the universe that
mm,
about whether you've succeeded or failed, and try again. And so yeah, the process of starting machine learning certainly like it's intimidating and difficult, and There's like, I think you have to become a better person to make progress in the end. You've got to deal with tedium as well. You've got to be able to sit there for long hours and just, focus. Like, and here we are, monkeys, right? Like, we want to do anything and everything. So
Yeah.
There's a certain maturity, I think, that you have to try to,
So you approach
embrace in the
learning,
end.
and then on top of that, specifically AI or artificial
Mm,
intelligence or machine learning as a means of self development in a way.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. So you make it how you score points, and how you like get to new levels and make progress, and all in the end of trying to offer value and stay on the edge.
Yeah.
Um, I have a I have a theory about where the value is, that it's on the edge, and so you have to be able to be on the edge,
How far do you think you
as it
are
were.
on the edge?
Oh, I'm on the edge basically. If you're someone developing machine learning, you're approximately on the edge, so to speak. Like,
Mm.
it's such an open landscape. There's so many apps or whatever that you could be working on. Just the medical field, for example, the explosion in data that's there. Like, there's so much more that a hospital could be doing to personalize, the data you're getting, or wearables, all that stuff. There's so much that, the future will bring to us in time, but just, yeah, endless value, that could be tapped, that, uh, yeah,
Is
a
that
person in this industry can get to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that being based in Australia is a positive or a negative in a space like this that's pushing the edge of a new technology and a new, if you will, a paradigm of thinking and processing data?
Well, it's hard for me to know. I don't have enough international experience to compare. I guess
Mm.
there'd be pros and cons everywhere. I love Australia basically, so
So
yeah,
you're here to stay? Yes. Well, that's a good thing. I
I'm
think
pretty
positive is that
pretty keen on this
we
place.
need we need
Um,
people like you here, more people. Yes.
for sure. Well, I think so. Machine learning technologies in the end will replace a lot of people around the place, and
Mm.
a country can offer services to international companies, international countries. So you can be effectively a small company based wherever, Australia or anywhere else, but serve an international audience through cloud-based technologies. So I think a person, like, the world can be your customer, I think, potentially from wherever you are, if you understand these technologies, and
Yeah.
have access to data and what have you.
So you
Yeah,
touched on the idea that some jobs will be obsolete as we go into this new
for sure.
era, and
Mm,
everyone that wants to talk about AI wants to discuss where are the jobs going to be. Do you have
mm,
a theory of where you think some people, such as myself, I mean, I'm not a programmer by trade, and I certainly wouldn't
mm.
say I could become as good a one as you. I definitely doubt that. I definitely doubt that.
Okay, well, okay, so you could seek shelter within monolithic companies that are eating all the other companies, but maybe that's small compensation. Um, if you want to be out there, you like create value and discover value on the edge, in a sense.
Yes.
So, um, like the you can create something that hasn't existed before, I think, more easily these days. And if you're not specifically, a software developer type of person, obviously you can partner with a more techno inclined type of person. Everyone, like, you form a network of people. You know, if As long as you can offer some value for what you do, and
Mm.
someone might be a salesperson, for example, if they're the more socially inclined.
Yes.
Um, and there's always need for people in dealing with people. So if you're not a tech person, a job where you're guiding people or guiding people through a process, for starters, is where like some jobs will stay, right?
Yeah.
Like
assisting with the
even if
interface between other human being and
yeah,
the other humans and the newer technology, if you want to call it newer. Um,
take the hospital 100 years from now,
Yeah.
right? So massively more automated. If I walk in, I maybe probably still want to talk to a person anyway, perhaps,
yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's like no one that's there, as it were, even though the technology would be very highly automated.
It's almost as if the new world around the corner could be human beings focused on developing the technology further, and the rest of the human species focused on helping other humans, as in comforting them, educating or guiding them, or basically just being assistance, personal assistance
Sure.
to the other people.
Yeah.
So you almost feel like there's.
We don't want to oversimplify it, really.
True.
Like there'll be a lot of that's happening in the future. I mean, entertainment will be extremely advanced, right?
Yeah.
You'll have your own very personal content streams that an AI is creating.
Yeah.
And it's got this embedding of who you are. Like it has a very clear idea of what you like, and maybe more than any other living person. And it creates the TV show for you and that kind of thing. So
what happens to actors? What happens to? I guess
potentially
essentially gone, right? And if you could,
because it's too easy in the end. But like if all you need is like someone's face and a manner of speaking, the AI will, in a sense, be very easily able to make old-looking people, young-looking people, pretty, ugly, all of it. So like, there's not going to be a bottleneck in creating a look, as it were. You could say maybe the AIs won't understand, human nuance or human emotion or storytelling or what have you, but I think it's a lot of people that don't necessarily understand those concepts, perhaps in a way that the AI will.
Yeah.
When it's looked at all of YouTube and that kind of thing, it'll have some pretty solid ideas about dramatic tension and various things.
And
so
what attracts humans' attention, what keeps humans' attention, and what spikes the humans' dopamine levels, etc.
Yeah. So I think, like within my lifetime, presumably there'll be an AI that's better at creating film than any human that's ever lived, type thing.
That's incredible. That is incredible. Is so just kind of touching on the subject of what roles are required in this industry. Do you have some suggestions for people who want to get into the space, other than learning about online learning? Is there any industries or areas you'd suggest focusing on? I think we talked at extent about the idea of data, because the whole industry really relies on the accuracy and annotation of data and data sets. Do you think that do you want to speak more along the lines of what people could do?
I guess if there's a question around opportunity, like where machine learning opportunities in what industries, in a manner of speaking, all industries. So there's not a particular limit there, but ultimately it's limited by data, as it were. So where there's lower hanging fruit and easier value available in that kind of thing, I guess industries where perhaps there's a lot of data generated by users that's really quite relevant. And an example would be, I would say, the medical industry, where like the amount of data that the human body can generate is just enormous.
Yes.
And way past what a person can be kind of dealing with and looking at and trying to analyze live or whatever. So you just want a piece of software doing that constantly. And I believe, in a manner of speaking, the technology already exists for predicting heart attacks well in advance, like days in advance, with software if your heart is being monitored by that software. So
Wow.
obviously, not all heart attacks, and I'm not a doctor, as it were, so I don't want to speak too heavily on it.
Mm.
But I have heard of certainly these cardiac rhythms being detected by these algorithms, like in a sense, many days in advance, and it's like, well, obviously a future where we've got more wearables collecting data about us. The more data that's being collected, the more potential opportunity there is for example, stuff like medical intervention. But more broadly, you're asking like, what are some industries where there's more value to be had?
Well,
And
you've just mentioned basically every industry will be touched by this.
yes,
So if
yeah,
I think it's the question I'm wondering more about is where are the lack where are we lacking in talents that needs to be filled in order for each of the industries to adopt some level of AI to automate or to advance its services and what it does. So healthcare, for sports and fitness,
so
retail, etc.
I guess in terms of what are sort of the bottlenecks to the development and that kind of thing, I guess to a lot of degree, it would be the host industry, whatever it is, won't really know necessarily very much about machine learning if it's not uh, particularly a data science driven
If
industry.
it's not playing
So
in the space already, yeah.
yeah, so some industries are more in this space already. They might be a bit more statistically motivated, but how much data science necessarily stay behind a website that's just a retail shop online? Not necessarily anything,
Mm.
but a large enough one, Amazon, for example, and it's all machine learning models in the background figuring out, personalized recommendations for you. So
Mm.
um, it's can be this kind of scaling thing in a manner of speaking. So if you're a little fish and you've got a small amount of data, machine learning isn't really for you yet. But when you get big enough, it's sort of inevitably helpful in a sense of like a website like Amazon, where you've got all this data, you may as well be learning important things and making automated recommendations or automated warnings or that kind of thing.
So it comes back down to how much data you are
Mm.
collecting. And if you are a business or even an individual getting into this space, would you say understanding what data is important to collect and how to store it and how to prepare it for someone like yourself would be really important, really a great way to get ahead of the curve. If you're not if you're not
Well,
going to be a data scientist yourself, understanding how to capture the data and present it's a
yeah.
good focus.
Yeah, well, if you're a company that hasn't really done any amount of data science per se yet, or doesn't have a cloud presence or that kind of thing, probably you're going to have to hire a data science consultant or something like that.
Yes.
But
Mm.
obviously, if a company gets big enough, yeah, you may just start getting permanent employees in for that kind of thing, data science employees. And but these days, it's kind of ever easier to get started in the space, as it were, because so much is just kind of in the cloud and quite accessible. So there's very little like blockers. Mostly the blockers are to do with knowledge,
Mm.
which is to say, okay, maybe you do want to do a data science project, but yeah, it may be hard to get the right person for the project because they may be very busy.
Yes.
So
Yep.
yeah.
And do you, switching gears a little bit, the idea of being immortal, we've discussed this in the past.
Mm,
And I know you're into fitness and I know you're into training the mind, keeping the
longevity.
mind, yes, longevity, keeping the mind intact for as long as
Mm.
possible. And longevity, you're still on that path, I'm assuming?
Absolutely.
Yes,
So it's, you might say, my main hobby is longevity.
hmm,
It does connect to machine learning
definitely.
and deep learning in that ultimately to be proactive with interventions, you'd want a data-driven approach that's personalized. So you can do a lot of things without monitoring yourself, and that will get you so far.
Yes.
But as time goes by, really, the next level involves monitoring yourself in various ways and like determining like what are the problems in a sense. So if your kidney is beginning to fail on you, at what point do you learn about that? And at what point do you take action and that kind of thing? And like previous generations didn't have the chance. So people aren't necessarily aware of what is possible. But I think it's extremely sensible, for example, to be getting like frequent blood tests and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just to collect the data, monitor thyself. Outside of data collection, there's lifestyle, of course, for being healthy, and that's an every moment, every day kind of thing.
So with the blood, because I've done blood samples, blood tests as well. Do you do that would you recommend doing that on an annual basis, every 12 months?
You could do it every 6 months. It depends how deep into it you go, and how much value you're getting out of it. Value may come in the longer term, but if you get rigorous with your nutritional intake, for example, you can see potentially, in a sense, the ramifications of your nutrition in your blood values as time goes by. So you might sort of be able to see the impact of an intervention on the data, on your body. And there's all these blood metrics of health, of what, healthy ranges, ideal levels. And if you stop eating hamburgers, you might suddenly discover, everything's much better from the data that you would otherwise perhaps not have other ways to tell.
Yeah.
But it depends, perhaps on how much value you're getting out of it. And, if you waited another 5 years or something before you started, like, there'd be more offerings. Like, there might be a lot people can do that's more important than blood tests ultimately, like just basic health changes are ultimately more important.
More exercise, eating healthier, obvious ones, obvious examples. I wish there was an easier way to capture that sort of data. I think with blood tests it would be amazing. I've looked into it, but I don't know, other than going to your GP, I don't know if there's an option to buy some sort of household device where you can check your own blood at home. That would be fascinating. Outside of that, you've obviously got the wearables, and wearables seem to be getting better and better. And I've got a Fitbit, and sleep tracking has been a big one for me. Made a huge difference. In learning about myself and understanding, where my heart rate is, what my resting heart rate is. So when I have a coffee, I see my heart rate shoot up, and then in the afternoon, comes back down, but I feel exhausted. But if I can keep my heart rate at a steady pace throughout the day outside of exercise, my energy levels stay consistent throughout the day. Yeah, if I'm stressed, it goes up by 10 to 20 beats per minute. Yeah, so I've got all of that, and it's
fascinating.
Yeah, it's
well, the stress is killing you if it keeps going, right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
There's the vague school of thought that you've got like a fixed number of heartbeats per se, and obviously that isn't quite real, but in a vague sense, it's an intuition that the more your heart is beating, the shorter your lifespan may be per se.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, because isn't the goal to get your resting heart rate as low as possible?
Yes, that's right. So, because the heart basically damages itself every time it beats, and at this point, our technology doesn't have the capacity to repair the heart, at least that kind of standard biological incremental damage. So, in a sense, you want it beating as slow as you can get away with, so that the engine keeps going for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And to do that, you want a powerful heart, and so you would do high intensity exercise, some of the time to strengthen the heart. So some of the time your heart rate's higher deliberately. But obviously, yeah, people can go too far, like marathon runners. And so people who you might think are hyper fit, like an ultra marathon runner, what have you, in fact, their hearts are leaky and damaged. Yeah. So they don't live
quite as long.
to old age. No.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you describe as the elixir of life then?
Well, first, it would be to love yourself enough to think that it is worth it, to be curious, to want to learn more, that your future is like to light the flame of how important it is to live longer and be healthy.
Yeah.
And if you manage to light that flame to start it off, kind of appreciate, I just need to learn more and keep learning more, and understand even psychology better, to get more and more motivated about it, to iteratively get healthier. And so in the end, I think if you follow where that self-love leads, you learn paradigms that help you, simple ideas that kind of relieve the pressure, perhaps, of the complexities of some of it.
Yes.
And you get better and better. And personally, I'm healthier and healthier.
That's great.
So my current exercise paradigm is you chase the tension. So there's a way of reminding yourself what kind of like muscular tension is with say various types of stretches. And if you do a stretch and find, there's a certain muscle in there that's tense, right? Well, now try to discover that in your shoulder and various places. And if you kind of focus on finding the tension, I think you can kind of like discover your weak links. And then if you're fixing up the little weak links here and there, you can really kind of make progress faster. So I think it's better to kind of do targeted exercise some of the time on those weak links and fix. Yeah. That robust, anti-fragile body is better than the bulgiest muscles, I think.
Yeah.
Just not being fragile.
There's a trade-off. I agree. I used to be very much into the weightlifting space, and I still go to gym, as I mentioned earlier, and but there's less focus on, from my perspective, on becoming huge, like humongous. And that idea doesn't actually lead to the healthiest body. That path doesn't lead to the healthiest body. Whereas, and it is just my perspective, I'm trying to lean more into how my body is best exercised. There's a way that it should be exercised. There's a certain limit on how much weight it should be lifting.
That's right.
And the angles that it should be lifting that weight at, or body weight exercises. You can get really good at bicep curls, and but then try and pick up a boulder outside, and you can't, because your legs are out of proportion, have been trained, your back isn't, your core strength is gone. Right? So great biceps, but a not functional physique is probably, in the end, you probably won't.
That's the thing to avoid. This kind of fragility that's baked in there and you didn't even know it, and then life has you picking up an end of the couch and
that's it,
and it's too late. And so like the goal of training is to prevent that moment where you suddenly discovered it in life that you couldn't do the thing. So before that moment, you train to make sure that you didn't have a weak lower back, because you checked, you tried it. So with this targeted, like sniffing out the weak link stuff, you should ultimately get this sense of, I'm not going to suddenly discover that, holding a thing this way will be like, whoa, because I've already tried that in training and I know that, it's fine.
Yeah.
So that's,
it's I would say it's the correct mindset, but most would say it's a different mindset, where you're going to gym to train to be better at surviving life, versus going to gym to train to look better. And you can still look great and have a great physique. But it is, if you're training for looks, you might find out a little bit too late that I know
plenty of people who hurt themselves And I think, in a sense, from overtraining or going for the heavier and heavier weight load on a deadlift or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a point where it's like diminishing returns going heavier on a big weight, and there's much greater returns on discovering something you're bad at with a lighter weight.
Yes.
You know,
I like that. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can do 60 push-ups in a row, stop doing push-ups. Do something else. Do something that you find hard. Yeah. So it should be an exciting moment to start at level 0 for something, because it means you're correctly targeting what you're terrible at, and you'll make the fastest progress.
So looping back around, and then we'll close out this podcast. When do you think, and I'm hopeful that AI will get to a point in our lifetime where it will help us discover where our weaknesses are, those little things that we need to build on, and act as a bit of a guiding voice to us, a logically guiding voice, very intimate, a voice that will know us very intimately and will give us guidance on how to, whether it's in our exercise or in our eating, or it might ideally spill over into areas such as what movies we're watching or content we're consuming, to help give us more of a positive mindset to life, or how to become better, mothers, fathers, son, daughter, employee, boss. Yeah. What do you think that? Are you excited for that? Do you see that happening? Are you building your own
It'll be
Jarvis
very
potentially?
important. Yeah. So I think sort of what you're referencing here is like a personalized helper AI.
Yes.
And I think we'll have that. And to a degree, you won't be able to survive without one in time, because in the end, there'll be predatory machine learning bots as well. And so they would hack your computer in seconds type thing. They could imitate the voice of someone on the phone, all sorts of stuff like that. And, just to take your money. And so to defend against those, you wouldn't be able to do it, but like a helper bot may be necessary on your side. So any phone number that comes in, but by the time you're seeing that phone number, an AI bot with an IQ of 300 has decided it's not a scammer bot, type thing.
Yeah.
So I think that'll end up being necessary to defend from the world, as it were. So you'll have your helper AI bot on your side, and it can offer therapy. It can offer many recommendations, exercise tips, all of that. The technology will pervade everywhere, right? So in the end, we'll have smart houses, that kind of thing. So smart cars, smart houses. I'll be fascinated to how cars will change when we're not driving them anymore. Does that mean?
Oh, you're on mute again.
I'll be fascinated about how cars change when we don't drive them anymore.
Yeah.
So will they combine, or there's all sorts of networking opportunities there too. But
and what does if you're not driving it, what does the passenger do? What do they? I've heard some ideas around entertainment in vehicles. What vehicles could help provide? Where could see them become change rooms or meeting rooms that move.
Buses.
Yeah.
Well, would it be more efficient? So if all the cars are driving themselves, maybe if you're kind of going across country or something, that they end up driving you into like a truck that's carrying all the cars combined and that kind of thing. And so there may be weird concepts where cars are able to join to each other. And if you don't need a driving wheel, maybe the seats can face backwards, and so you've kind of more got a bit of a party zone there.
Okay.
People are facing each other.
Here's a question for you. What is the purpose? I'm curious to explore this a little bit. What is the purpose of getting into a car right now? Like, we understand the purpose is to get to a destination, and why does if it's human as the cargo, if it's a human being as the cargo, typically they're going to a location to get food, or to meet someone, or to purchase something, some sort of product, right? To buy something, to collect something physical.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, mostly transport, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time it requires a driver, but there's just so many scenarios where it just would be easier if we didn't need to be driving. And
What
The
if
paradigm.
we
Mhm.
saw these, again, if we flip it on its head, so instead of a human being gets into a car right now because they want to go to a destination, what if the car industry becomes an industry that brings things to you?
Well, I tend to think it'll be flying drones that'll be part of that.
Mm.
But yes, so trucks that have a robot in them, and the robot can pick up the box in the truck and carry it to your door and put it in a parcel handling
Yes.
thing at your house,
Yep.
or drones. Yeah, that kind of direction I think will keep going for sure.
And imagine these
Um,
vehicles if we want. So right now we get in. If you're in business development, or if you're in a business and work that is focused around meeting people, imagine being able to you get in one vehicle and that vehicle takes you to effectively halfway across town. The person you want to meet with, they get in their own vehicle and they will meet you halfway across town. The
yeah,
vehicles could join together and you could have your meeting. While you're having that meeting, the vehicle
exactly.
is then moving towards either a destination where you can have
Mhm.
food, or
Yeah,
if you've pre-booked another meeting, the other passenger from it, all vehicles are kind of moving in and out in this matrix, according to your schedule and according to everyone else's schedules. So by the time you finish one meeting, the other person can disconnect their vehicle, and then the next vehicle connect to you, and you can progress with the next meeting. Or yeah, I wonder if that could be a future. Even you could have miniature restaurants almost, or vending machines that are in these vehicles that then connect up to you based on what you want to have for lunch. And you basically spend the whole day on the road, if you will, traveling, where the vehicles are taking you as like in a pod around town and connecting up to different pods depending on what you need to get done.
exactly. If a car restaurant connected to my car,
Mm.
I think that'd be so awesome. I'd really appreciate that. And so, yeah, I think if we no longer need the steering wheel in the end, I feel it really frees up the nature of cars and what's possible with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, ideas like this can come to life. I think it will take a while, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like this is many, many kind of decades to properly integrate what's possible. But we can
Step
hope.
by step. Mm.
That's it, man. Awesome.
And we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, our own government here in Australia and governments around the world will become pro development and pro progress in these spaces, rather than whacking on too much legislation that
Yeah.
hinders the progress. That, in my mind, I don't know about you, but I think in my mind that's probably going to be the thing that slows us down the most. Is which countries are the ones that are going to open the doorway to allow development to progress as quickly and
Mhm.
safely, obviously, as possible, versus countries
Yeah.
that want to slow it down and over police the development of the technology.
There's policing. I suppose I don't think that is quite what's needed so much as helping, like, and
Yeah.
having people cooperate and build. Like, there's the data ethics piece, but obviously you're competing with uh, countries where, like, they'll presumably militarize machine learning into bots as well.
Mm.
We could all dream of that not happening, but I just don't see what will stop that from happening in the end. So yeah, there's plenty of positives and plenty of challenges as well.
Mm.
Yeah, it's what we make of it in the end. But with governments, I think they do have a role in appreciating how profoundly important it change so many things. So, um, like there's regulation for the medical industry and that kind of thing to safeguard data, but there's also you weigh risks with regards to privacy loss
Yeah.
with advantages that the technologies can bring on the other side there that is part of that risk equation. So um, yeah, I think a lot of governments are coming on board, and it will get quite competitive
Yeah.
in the end.
Well, considering
Hmm.
some governments are not paying much attention at all, or throwing out the idea of ethics in AI. I know there's a
Yeah.
few of those around the world. Yeah, kind of. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Will we
For sure.
fall behind too far, or will we kind of realize how much we need to be at the forefront, and then there'll be a change of, let's say, perspective, and
Yeah.
change of heart towards what sort of limitations or like you said, support that we need in the industry.
Well, it will be difficult for a small country like Australia to keep up with various countries that are spending, billions and trillions. We each can but try to keep up, and not become, backwards, barbaric places, right?
Yeah.
But that means this technology will really automate a lot of stuff in our societies and really sweep through. But you wouldn't want to be the country that doesn't do it, or surrounded by the countries that do.
Yes. Yes. That is we'll have to do another show in about 10 years time to see where we're at with all of this. Interesting.
For sure.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time, Sam. Appreciate it. And looking forward to catching up again very soon.